Congressional leaders unveiled their massive and long-awaited $1.7 trillion government funding bill. But with a shutdown looming this Friday, lawmakers have very little time to review the legislative text, which runs more than 4,000 pages long. Let's bring in Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. He's a member of the Appropriations Committee. Senator, thanks for joining us. I want to ask you, because one of the things that was left out of the spending bill are two widely supported bipartisan antitrust bills that would rein in big tech monopolies like Apple and Google. Neither bill was given a vote on the Senate or the House floor, which Democrats control. I'll point out that one of the biggest sources for campaign funds for Democrats these days is big tech. Why was this legislation left out that would protect consumers and small businessmen?
There's no excuse at all, Jake. None at all. So to anyone trying to give you an excuse, I can't. It should have been. It's something we all talked about, from redoing Section 230 on down. But why that was done, I have no clue whatsoever. I cannot give you an answer on that. We knew a lot of the stuff. We've been working on things for a whole year, Jake, so we had a lot of input on a lot of the things that's been in there, and it's gone through the Appropriations Committee when we were working together. But at the end there's an awful lot comes together. I can say that. But why some things are taken out and four corners have to agree, Democrats and Republicans, whether it be McConnell or whether it be Senator Schumer, or whether it be Nancy or Kevin on the House side.
One thing that is in the massive bill, I know you're happy about, is the legislation to reform the Electoral Count Act. It would raise the threshold needed to challenge presidential electors. Right now, it only requires one lawmaker in the House and one in the Senate. Are you satisfied these changes are enough to prevent any future attempts to overturn election results? Well,
basically, it'll stop what happened to us January the 6th. That was our main call, and that's what we addressed. Everyone had a different idea how to approach that, Jake. Some wanted to go further, some wanted to do a lot more. I understand that. And the House did a lot more of what they sent over. But basically, working in a bipartisan way that we have to, working in the Senate, we came up with something that addressed, first of all, being totally ceremonial, so a vice president can never be caught in that situation again. Next of all, just one congressperson or one senator couldn't hold up a whole counting process for one state. Now it takes 20% or 86 congresspeople to say, we think the state of XYZ was wrong, and we think the count was wrong, and we contest that. And you had to have 20 senators to confirm it. So that puts a whole nother wrinkle into it, and I think adds more to an oversight and democracy, if you will. And next of all, the electoral college, those people, the electors, have to be chosen before the election, not afterwards, to try to get people that you think is going to go along with you. And then we have a court, accelerated court proceedings. So there's the things that have stopped what happened January the 6th. There's still a lot more to do, but you remember, we have states' rights also.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw, but Kevin McCarthy, who is really trying to get the votes to become Speaker, he said that if any Republicans in the Senate vote for this omnibus spending bill, $1.7 trillion, then their legislative priorities will not be heard in the House when he is Speaker. Mitt Romney called that silliness. What do you think of it?
I think Mitt described it pretty well. Yeah, pretty well. I mean, this is not a vindictive type of thing that we're not in high school or college and playing games back and forth. This is real life. And with that being said, Kevin is fighting, I understand, for his political life over there. Wish him well. Don't know how that's going to come out. We have no input on that whatsoever. But to say you're going to stop everything and hold things hostage if we do things that we think is best for our country on our side, and we have Democrats and Republicans both agreeing, then it's something to be worked out when the two get together, both sides, the bicameral. That's why we have a bicameral body here. I have the House and the Senate. So saying that one's going to put pressure and control the other, and if you do that, forget your legislation's dead, that's not leadership.
Another provision left out of the omnibus spending bill was the bill to protect Afghan allies who served with American troops in Afghanistan. If that comes up as an amendment, would you vote for it?
Absolutely. That's a big mistake. We had people risking their lives and their families' lives, and there was promises made. And we have people that basically, when we go into areas of conflict, when we have our troops and the lives of our troops in danger, and we have someone willing to protect our troops and work with us to try to give us the best chance of survival and success, and we can at least make sure that we keep them protected, yes, I would vote for that.
The fate of Title 42 is up in the air right now as the U.S. grapples with the crisis on the border. Congress has failed to deal with the border for decades, as I don't need to tell you. Is there any kind of bipartisan agreement that can be made to solve this? And why isn't it happening yet?
I think there is. I think there's some breakthrough here. And you know, there's been a lot of conversations going on. And I understand the administration, under the leadership of Secretary Mayorkas, working on behalf of the administration, has some things that they've been talking about, and I'm thinking that the group that we put together have been John Cornyn and myself from the Senate, and we have Congressman Gonzalez and Congressman Cuellar, who are Congressman Cuellar and John Cornyn are right on the front lines in Texas. So they know it better than anybody else, but there are things that they believe that can be done. They've been exchanging those ideas back and forth. We've written a letter. 42 must be basically enforced and continued on, and not just in the realm of the pandemic, but also in the realm of security. We have to be able to secure our borders. There's never going to be, Jake, meaningful immigration reform until we get committed to securing our border. You have to have a secure border. There have to be ports of entry. There have to make sure that people go through the proper vetting process. And those are all things that we can do, but until you secure that border, and that seems to be where the big rub is, how secured should it be, what should you secure it? It's going to take everything. The 2013 bill is still the best piece of legislation that we've ever worked on in immigration, and we couldn't get a vote in the House at that time, and it's a shame that never happened because we passed it bipartisan, over 68 votes in the Senate.
Yeah.
And it basically was all geared around, you couldn't have anybody becoming a U.S. citizen until the border was deemed secured.
Yeah. After Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema announced she was leaving the Democratic Party in an interview with me about a week and a half ago, you later said in an interview that you'll let us know what you're going to decide to do. So well, I'll ask you, do you intend to remain a member of the
Jake,
Democratic Party?
I don't think there's anyone more independent than me and the way I've been voting in my entire life, over 40 years. I'm not a Washington Democrat, and I have a lot of good friends who aren't Washington Republicans. This party tribal mentality is killing our country. People are sick and tired of it. I respect Kyrsten's decision. God bless her. She made her decision, and she's very articulate in the way she's pointed out of why she did what she did. And I think that basically I'll make my decision whenever I make a decision, or if I do make a decision, I'll do it, and I'm not in any hurry to do that. So, you know, the bottom line is I'm not changing how I vote. I'm not changing how I approach a problem. If my Republican colleagues have a good idea, I'm for it. I can go home and explain it. If the Democrats have a good idea, I can support that also. And I'm not afraid to say I can't support something that makes no sense at all to the Democrats or Republicans. So just people have gotten so, it's what team are you on? I'm on one team. I'm on the American team. I would like to think we're all on the same side. We just have different branches, that's all. But the same side is the American side.
Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Merry Christmas, sir. Good to see you as always.
Thank you, Jake. Always good to be with you.